Hello, welcome to another Women Wrestler biography video. In this video, we are going to discuss about the James wrestling career and about her life. So let's get started. James' early life. James was born at Richmond Memorial Hospital in Richmond, Virginia on 1979, the daughter of Stuart James, a retired wastewater treatment worker, landscaper, and Vale League Division III championship coach, and Sandra Knuckles, a teacher and real estate agent. Her parents divorced while she was young. She has a sister, a half-sister, a half-brother, and 3 stepbrothers. She grew up in Montpelier, Virginia, and graduated from Patrick Henry High School in 1997. While growing up, she spent a lot of time on her grandmother's horse farm and developed a keen interest in equestrian sports. She played violin for 5 years. James is part Native American of the Powhatan tribe. Professional wrestling career, independent circuit 1999 to 2003. A fan of professional wrestling from an early age, James attended a professional wrestling school in the Washington, D.C. area at the suggestion of a friend. She made her professional debut on the independent circuit in 1999 as a valet for KYD Pro Wrestling under the ring name Alexis Laree, a name created as the result of a combination of her stage name from when she was a dancer and her middle name. Laree went on to manage several male wrestlers, including managing Tommy Dreamer to win the KYD Pro Heavyweight Championship. In March, she wrestled in her first match, an intergender tag team match with Jake Damian against American Mike Brown and Canny. She trained to improve her wrestling abilities by attending training camps such as the Funking Conservatory, a workshop run by Dory Funk Jr., and an Extreme Championship Wrestling dojo. She also started competing for Maryland Championship Wrestling MCW, where she trained at camps run by Ricky Morton and Bobby Eaton. Beginning in 2002, she also made appearances for Ring of Honor. Due to the low salary of the independent shows, James supplemented her income by working as a waitress at an Olive Garden restaurant and posing nude for adult fetish magazines Leg Show and Naughty Neighbors in the early 2000s, before gaining fame and being subsequently signed by World Wrestling Entertainment in 2003. Total Nonstop Action Wrestling 2002 to 2003. While working in Ring of Honor for a year, James also debuted as Alexis Laree in Total Nonstop Action Wrestling TNA on the company's first ever weekly pay-per-view, introduced as a participant in the Lingerie Battle Royal, which occurred the following week. She was not prominently featured until March 26, 2003, when she teamed with Amazing Red as part of his feud against the X Division champion Kid Cash and Trinity. Laree competed in her first singles match with the promotion on April 2, 2003, in a losing effort against Trinity. Weeks later, she became the first member of The Gathering, a stable led by Raven in his feud against NWA World Heavyweight Champion Jeff Jarrett. On April 16th, Laree became the first woman to compete in a Clockwork Orange House of Fun match, after The Gathering challenged and defeated Jarrett. She continued to wrestle with the stable while they feuded with the Disciples of the New Church, taking part in an angle with Father James Mitchell burning her with a fireball and wrestling in another Clockwork Orange House of Fun match before leaving the company. World Wrestling Entertainment, Ohio Valley Wrestling 2003 to 2005. After 2 years of sending tapes and making phone calls as well as wrestling a tryout dark match with Dawn Marie, James was signed to a developmental contract with World Wrestling Entertainment. Hugh sent her to train at Ohio Valley Wrestling, their then developmental territory, in August 2003. Still using the ring name Alexis Laree, she began making television appearances for OVW on January 29, 2004. And competed in several tag team matches throughout the year. She also won a Halloween costume contest on October 30th and defeated Jillian Hall in a $1,000 match on November 12th. On May 17, 2005, Laree was placed into a tournament for the OVW Television Championship. She defeated Mike Mondo in the first round, only to lose to Blaster Lashley in the next round. She began a feud with Beth Phoenix on July 20th after Phoenix interrupted Laree during an interview, setting up a match on July 29th. which Laree lost. Their angle continued into September, with Shelly Martinez being added to the storyline to side with Phoenix against Laree. On October 12th, she appeared in No VW under her real name and finished the year on the losing end of matches against Martinez and Jillian Hall. Storyline with Trish Stratus 2005 to 2006. Under her real name, she debuted in WWE on the October 10th, 2005 episode of Raw as a face under the gimmick of WWE Women's Champion Trish Stratus' biggest fan. The angle had the two divas competing together in tag team matches, with James' character becoming increasingly obsessed with Stratus. The storyline included a Halloween costume contest, in which James was dressed like Stratus and helped Stratus retain the Women's Championship in a Fulfill Your Fantasy Battle Royal at Taboo Tuesday by eliminating herself and Victoria at the same time. James even began utilizing Stratus' signature finishing moves as her own during matches. James later became the #1 contender for the WWE Women's Championship on December 12th. By defeating Victoria in a match to determine who would face Stratus at New Year's Revolution. Subsequently, the storyline between Mickie. In the championship match at the pay-per-view, James lost to Stratus. Despite the defeat, James continued to be enamored of Stratus, which made Stratus uncomfortable. On March 6, 2006, the storyline had Stratus confronting James, telling her that they needed time apart from each other. Through the early part of 2006, Mickie would attack Ashley Massaro several times due to Massaro calling her crazy. At the Royal Rumble pay-per-view, James defeated Massaro with then Women's Champion Trish Stratus as the special guest referee. James would also confess her love for Stratus at the event. Massaro got revenge 1 week later on Raw. James and Stratus teamed together at the March 18, 2006 Saturday Night's Main Event 32 to defeat Candice Michelle and Victoria. After the match, James agreed to honor Stratus' wishes and attempted to kiss her. After Stratus pushed her away, James attacked Stratus and vowed to destroy her, turned heel in the process. The feud between James and Stratus culminated in a Women's Championship match at WrestleMania 22, which James won to earn her first Women's Championship in what was looked at as one of the best female matches ever produced at WrestleMania. Her angle with Stratus continued into Backlash during a rematch, after Stratus legitimately dislocated her shoulder when James threw her out of the rip match. Women's Champion 2006 to 2008. James dropped the WWE Women's Championship on August 14 to Lita, after Lita hit James with the title belt. After the Women's Championship was vacated due to the retirement of Trish Stratus, James entered a tournament to determine the new champion. She defeated Victoria and Melina en route to the finals at Cyber Sunday, where she lost to Lita. James transitioned into a face after she and Lita wrestled in a series of matches in which Lita chose stipulations to hinder Mickie's wrestling ability. The feud between James and Lita ended at Survivor Series, where James defeated Lita in the latter's retirement match to win her second Women's Championship. James then began an angle with Melina on January 29, 2007, when Melina became the #1 contender for the Women's Championship. Following a successful title defense on February 5, James teamed with Super Crazy in a mixed tag team match against Melina and Johnny Nitro. After Melina pinned James for the victory, she challenged her to a rematch for the title. James would subsequently lose the Women's Championship to Melina on February 19 and, was not seriously injured in the incident. The scripted feud between James and Melina was rekindled during her photo op on Raw. At a house show in Paris, France on April 24, James won her third Women's Championship during a triple threat match that also involved Victoria. Since Mickie pinned Victoria and not Melina, an immediate rematch was scheduled, in which James dropped the title back to Melina, giving her the shortest Women's Championship reign in WWE history. James later received a rematch for the title at Backlash, but was unsuccessful. After Backlash, James would only make sporadic appearances on television, wrestling occasionally in tag matches and rarely in singles competition. On the November 26th episode of Raw, James defeated Melina in a #1 contenders match for Beth Phoenix's Women's Championship, setting up a title match between the two at Armageddon, in which Phoenix retained the title. On the April 14th, 2008 episode of Raw, held in London, England, James defeated Beth Phoenix to win her 4th Women's Championship. At Judgment Day, James successfully defended her title against Melina and Beth Phoenix in a triple threat match. Mickie re-entered the feud against Phoenix in mid-2008, where she and Kofi Kingston teamed up against Phoenix and Santino Marella at SummerSlam in a winner-takes-all tag team match for both the Women's and Intercontinental Championships, in which Mickie and Kingston lost their titles to Phoenix and Marella. After James lost the championship, she had 2 rematches for the title, but was unsuccessful in regaining it. At Survivor Series in November, James was part of the victorious Raw Eva team, which defeated the SmackDown Evas in a 5-on-5 elimination match. She eliminated Michelle McCool before being eliminated by Maryse. The following month at Armageddon, James teamed with Maria, Michelle McCool, and Kelly in a winning effort against Jillian Hall, Maryse, Victoria, and Natalya. Following an appearance in the 2-5 Diva Battle Royal at WrestleMania 25, James began feuding with the WWE Divas champion Maryse heading into Night of Champions on July 26. At the event, James defeated Maryse to win her first Divas Championship, becoming only the 2nd Diva in history to have held both the Women's and Divas titles. Throughout the summer, Mickie successfully defended the title against Gail Kim and Beth Phoenix on episodes of Raw, and against Alicia Fox at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view on October 4th. 2 weeks later on Raw, James lost the title to Jillian Hall after an approximate 3-month title reign. After the show, James was traded to the SmackDown brand for the first time in her career, due to a Diva trade made by Raw guest host Nancy O'Dell. James made her debut with the brand on the October 23rd episode of SmackDown, defeating Layla. On the October 30th episode of SmackDown, a controversial angle began that saw WWE Women's Champion Michelle McCool and Layla, collectively known as Lay Cool, bully James. On the November 20th episode of SmackDown, after James defeated Layla, McCool gave James the nickname Piggy James that sent James to tears, resulting in a 5-on-5 Survivor Series match at the November pay-per-view Survivor Series, where James' team prevailed over McCool's team, with James and Melina as the sole survivors. On the December 4th episode of SmackDown, James became the #1 contender for McCool's Women's Championship by defeating Beth Phoenix and Natalya in a triple threat match. The following week, James challenged McCool for the championship at TLC, Tables, Ladders, and Chairs, but was unsuccessful after interference from Layla. On the January 22nd edition of SmackDown, another controversial segment in the feud took place when Lay Cool beat Doan James, force-fed her a pig-shaped cake, and dumped a bowl of punch on her head, leaving her sobbing and defeated in the ring. The storyline feud continued into the Royal Rumble on January 31st, 2010, where James finally defeated McCool in 20 seconds to become a 5-time Women's Champion, the second most reigns with the old WWE Women's Championship after Trish Stratus, who has had 7 reigns. Over the following couple of weeks, SmackDown consultant Vickie Guerrero was introduced into the rivalry, choosing to side with Lay Cool over James. On the February 26th episode of SmackDown, McCool used her rematch clause to face James for the Women's Championship, with Guerrero acting as special guest referee. After Guerrero slapped James, McCool pinned her to regain the title. On March, James was diagnosed with a staph infection on her right knee, putting her out of action for 3 weeks. She returned on the March 22nd episode of Raw, where alongside Kelly, she accompanied Eve Torres, Beth Phoenix, and Gail Kim in their losing effort against McCool, Maryse, and Layla, who had Vickie Guerrero and Alicia Fox in their corner. This set up a 10-diva tag team match at WrestleMania 26, in which James made an unsuccessful in-ring return after Vickie pinned Kelly. James made her last appearance on Raw during a rematch, where her team was victorious. James' final match in WWE aired on the April 23rd episode of SmackDown, where she teamed with former longtime rival Beth Phoenix against Lay Cool in a losing effort when she was pinned by Layla. James was released from WWE one day earlier on April 22nd, having pre-taped her SmackDown match. According to James, WWE explained the decision as due to desiring to move in a new direction with their women's division. Before moving forward, subscribe our channel and hit the bell icon for more upcoming videos. Sporadic appearances 2013. In November 2013, James served as guest trainer at the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida for a week, training female wrestlers. James also attended that week's NXT live event in Tampa, Florida. Returned to the independent circuit 2010 to 2016, James made her return to the independent circuit in April 2010 as part of World Wrestling Council WWC, teaming with Carlito to defeat the team of ODB and Christopher Daniels. James won the bout after pinning Daniels. On July 11th, as part of their anniversary weekend, she defeated ODB in a singles match. On the last day of that month, James returned to one of her early promotions, Maryland Championship Wrestling MCW, to wrestle Mia Yim in a winning effort. The following month, she contested for the Women's Superstars Uncensored WSU Championship against Mercedes Martinez, but she was unsuccessful. She also returned to Dory Funk's promotion, recording a tag team match for Bang TV. James also accompanied Dory Funk Jr. during his match and sung the Star Spangled Banner during Bang's tribute to the troops. On September 18th, James served as a special guest referee for a three-way match between ODB, Persephone, and Christine Flake for the SCWA Ladies title during Southern California Wrestling Association's SCWA caged event in Wentworth, North Carolina, where all matches took place in a cage. James made her debut for Pro Wrestling Elite PWE in Ayr, Scotland on September 15, 2012, at History is Born, where she wrestled Kaylee Ray to a no contest. After the match, James teamed up with Ray in a winning effort against Carmel and Nikki Storm. The following night, James competed against Carmel in a winning effort. James returned to Pro Wrestling Elite at their 2-year anniversary event Elite Bro on July 20, 2013, in a winning effort against Nikki Storm. On September 21st, James made an appearance at the Wrestling Spectacular 2 all-female event in Edison, New Jersey, alongside many former WWE and TNA female wrestlers, such as Angelina Love, Katarina Waters, Rosita, and Brooke Adams. James and Love fought in the main event, with Candice Michelle as the special guest referee, where Love pinned James after interference from Velvet Sky. James made appearances for Big Time Wrestling in August 2013, doing so as a villainous wrestling Ruby Sky several times in different dates and locations, winning in all bouts against Sky on October 12th. Mickie again appeared for the promotion, beating Quebec's Midian in Bristol, Connecticut. On February 8, 2014, James returned to Maryland Championship Wrestling for the Anniversary 2014 event in Joppa, Maryland to face Angelina Love, promoted as Battle of the Bombshells. Although originally promoted as a singles match, interference by McQueen's Renee Mitchell's and Jessie K's rivalry occurred during the match, resulting in the match being turned into a tag team match with Mickie and Michelle facing Angelina and K's, which James and Michelle won. Return to TNA, feud with Madison Rayne 2010 to 2011. On September 22, 2010, it was reported that James had signed a contract with Total Nonstop Action Wrestling TNA. James returned to the promotion on October 7th before the Glory special episode of Impact, when she was introduced as the special guest referee for the TNA Knockouts Championship match between Angelina Love, Velvet Sky, Madison Rayne, and Tara at Bound for Glory. At the pay-per-view, James counted the pinfall, which made Tara the new Knockouts champion, prompting Rayne to shove James amidst an argument with Tara, and James replying with a punch. On the following episode of Impact, Tara lost the title to Rayne, while James made her intentions for the Knockouts title clear after a confrontation with the new champion. James wrestled her return match the following week, defeating Sarita, before being attacked by Reigns' ally, Tara. James wrestled her first TNA pay-per-view match at Turning Point, where she battled Tara to a double disqualification. Knockouts Championship reigns 2011 to 2013. On April 17th, James defeated Madison Rayne in a steel cage match, which lasted less than a minute, to win the TNA Knockouts Championship for the first time. With the win, James became the first woman in history to have held the WWE Women's Championship, the WWE Divas Championship, and the TNA Knockouts Championship. On the May 5th episode of Impact, James made her first successful title defense against Miss Desmacher. On May 15th at Sacrifice, James successfully defended her title against Madison Rayne and in the process helped Tara get a release from her alliance with Rayne. The following month at Slammiversary IX, James successfully defended her title against Angelina Love. However, after the match both Love and Winter attacked her. On June 18, James made her debut for his Mexican partner Lucha Libre a worldwide at Triple Mino XIX, where she teamed with Angelina Love, Sexy Star, and Velvet's Kai to defeat Cynthia Morno, Fabi Apache, Lolita, and Mary Apache in an 8-woman tag team match. James returned to on July 9th, teaming with Sexy Star to defeat the Apaches in a tag team match, after which she challenged Mary to a match for her Reina Championship. Second return to TNA 2015, James made a surprise return to TNA as a fan favorite, after a year and a half absence from the company. On January 30, 2015, during the tapings of Impact Wrestling in Glasgow, Scotland, James would then have several confrontations with Bram over his actions towards her real-life fiancé, Magnus. On the April 24th episode of Impact Wrestling, James retired from wrestling to focus on becoming a full-time mother, but James Storm-talked her into having one more match. On the June 3rd episode of Impact Wrestling, James declined an offer by Storm to join the Revolution, which resulted in him intentionally shoving her onto a train track in the storyline, which sparked controversy. This was done to write off James from television, as she had no more dates set with the company at the time. James made her return on the July 1st episode of Impact Wrestling, confronting Storm and challenging him to an intergender tag team match. After the match, James got revenge on Storm, and she delivered a jumping DDT on him. On the July 29th episode of Impact Wrestling, James and Magnus defeated Storm and his partner Serena, when James pinned Serena. Global Force Wrestling 2015 to 2016. On July 7, 2015, James signed with Global Force Wrestling GFW. On July 24th, at his inaugural tapings in Las Vegas, Nevada, James lost a 3-way GFW Women's Championship Tournament qualifying match that also included Late Tapa and the Ultimate winner, Christina Von Eerie. On January 22nd, Christina Von Eerie defeated James and Kimberly to retain the GFW Women's Championship. Return to WWE 2016 to 2021. Alliance and feud with Alexa Bliss 2016 to 2019. On October 13, 2016, it was announced that James would return to his developmental brand NXT at the NXT TakeOver Toronto event on November 19th, competing against Asuka for the NXT Women's Championship. On the October 26th episode of NXT, James cut a promo where she formally reintroduced herself and challenged Asuka for the championship. At the event, James was defeated, and after the match Asuka refused to shake her hand as a sign of disrespect. On December 8th, it was announced that James had signed a multi-year contract with WWE. According to James, she asked to return under her previous character, which she later would see as a throwback. On the January 17, 2017 episode of SmackDown Live, James made her return by helping Alexa Bliss retain her SmackDown Women's process. She competed in her first match in nearly 7 years in a WWE ring on January 29, 2017, at the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. teaming with Bliss and Natalie against Lynch, Naomi, and Nikki Bella in a losing effort. James went on to face Lynch at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view in another losing effort. She would defeat Lynch in a rematch on the edition of February 14th of SmackDown, but would lose a 2 out of 3 falls match 2 weeks later to end the storyline. In March, James victorious. At WrestleMania 33, James took part in a six-pack challenge for Bliss SmackDown Women's Championship, which saw Naomi winning the title. Brand switches and departure 2019 to 2021. As part of the 2019 Superstar Shakeup, James was drafted back to the SmackDown brand. During a live event on June 1st, it was reported that James had suffered a torn ACL. On July 16th, James underwent successful knee surgery and would be out of action for 7 to 9 months. During her recovery from injury, James would become a commentator for Main Event. Her first post-draft appearance occurred on January 4, 2021, during the Special Legends Night episode of Raw, appearing alongside several other WWE legends. That same month, James competed in the Women's Royal Rumble match, entering at number 19, but was eliminated by Lacey Evans. In April, she appeared on stage during the opening of WrestleMania 37 alongside the rest of the active roster. On April 15, 2021, WWE announced that they had released Mickie James along with several other talent. Prior, she had participated in commentary on shows such as Main Event and NXT. Her release was met with some controversy, as she claimed her belongings were sent to her in a trash bag. Several other former talents such as Jillian Hall, Maria Kanellis, and Gail Kim voiced similar experiences when they were fired. The senior employee responsible for this was let go, and James received a public apology from Stephanie McMahon. National Wrestling Alliance 2021. James made her National Wrestling Alliance debut on the June 8, 2021 episode of NWA Power, announcing that she will serve as an executive producer for the first all-female event, NWA Empowerer. On June 23, James announced on an Instagram video that she will be returning to the ring and delivers an open challenge to anyone to wrestle her at the NWA 73rd anniversary show. One Night WWE Crossover 2022. On the January 7, 2022 episode of SmackDown, James was announced as a participant in the Women's Royal Rumble match at Royal Rumble, while being acknowledged as Impact Knockouts World Champion. Later that night, Impact Wrestling also promoted her upcoming appearance. During the Royal Rumble, she entered at 20 with her Impact theme and with the Impact Knockouts World Championship belt. She lasted just under 12 minutes in the match, managing to eliminate her former rival Michelle McCool, and was later eliminated by another former rival, Lita. Music career. James' first country music album, Strangers and Angels, was released on May 18, 2010, on iTunes. The album was self-released with an independent team. On December 2, 2010, James released another single called Hardcore Country, which was also used as her entrance music with TNA and on their independent circuit appearances. A music video for the single was first shown during James's first appearance on TNA Spin Cycle. For her second album, James joined a Kickstarter campaign in order to partially fund the album. Fans who contributed donations received special items from the campaign. The online campaign was a success, with a total pledge of $16500 out of a $5,000 goal. The funds helped to produce the first 6 songs from the album. The album, called Somebody's Gonna Pay, was released on May 7, 2013, under the label Entertainment One Music, and debuted on the music charts at 15 on the Billboard's Heat Seekers charts. James also filmed a music video for the song Somebody's Gonna Pay, from her second album of the same name. The video features former WWE Women's Champion, Trish Stratus, and James' then-fiancé Magnus. TNA founder, Jeff Jarrett, was also on set of the video in Nashville, Tennessee. Jarrett did not appear in the video, but taught James how to swing a guitar. While she worked for TNA, James also toured around the United States. holding small concerts at various venues. Personal life. When she is finished with her wrestling career, James plans to own a farm and be an equine trainer. James owns 3 Morgan horses named Rhapsody, Bunny, and Casanova. James also owns 2 dogs, one named Butch and a miniature pinscher named Elvis. Outside of wrestling, James received her Associate of Arts degree in Business Administration and studied for her Bachelor of Arts degree in Operations Management. James has 2 tattoos, a symbol meaning love on her ankle and a dragon that wraps around it. James is a fan of equine sports and American football and is a fan of the Dallas Cowboys. In 2007, James was engaged to fellow wrestler Kenny Dykstra. On September 25, 2014, James and Nick Aldis had their first child, a boy named Donna Van Patrick Aldis. James and Aldis got engaged in December 2014 and married on December 31, 2015. Championships and accomplishments. She won different championships like Ground Zero Wrestling, International Pro Wrestling in United Kingdom, Southern Championship Wrestling, Ultimate Championship Wrestling, World Wrestling Entertainment, Maryland Championship Wrestling, and the list goes on. So guys, that was all about today's topic. See you soon in the next video. Goodbye.